100 questions answered. You think I can do it? I think I can do it. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I did not build anything last week for today's video. I took a few days off, took my family camping and relaxed a little bit, and also this coming weekend, tomorrow, if you're watching this video on Friday, is FanQuest. It is a convention here in Winnipeg, and on Sunday I will be there doing a few panels and meet and greets and all that kind of fun stuff. So I just simply didn't have time to build anything, so I'm doing everybody's favorite YouTuber cop-out and doing a Q&A for today's video. So I put up on the community tab on YouTube and Facebook asking for you guys to give me your questions so that I could answer them. I got like 500 questions, so I'm not gonna answer 500 questions. Luckily, a lot of them overlap. There's a lot of people who asked variations of the same question, so that's great. There was also a fair amount of questions that I'm not gonna delve into because I have answered them in fully dedicated videos, like how do you use terrain to set up a room? Well, I have a whole video on that. If you have a question like that, use the search bar in YouTube, Black Magic Craft, insert thing you're wondering about, there's likely a video about it. I'm also not going to delve into some very good questions because I've already covered them extensively in previous Q&As. I will put links down below if you want to dive into those ones, namely my origin story. I covered that extensively in the Q&As and also in my It's Okay to Be a Beginner video, which you should check out if you want. That one is worth the time to dig into. And a lot of people asked me about my musical background, which again, I've covered in detail in those videos, but just the short answer for those who don't want to delve deep. I used to be an electronic music producer. I had two projects. One was called Distorted Memory. It was an electro-industrial project, and the other was called Cake Builder, and it was a breakcore, kind of aggressive IDM drum and bass thing. I will put links to the band camps for both of those in the video description, so if you want to just go listen to them, you can do that. With that out of the way, I got 100 questions. I broke everything down to 100, and I'm going to try to power through them so that this is enjoyable to actually sit through and watch, and you get your questions answered. Future self, you're gonna have to edit this really well. I'm also gonna kind of paraphrase some of these questions to save time. So let's start with the questions from my patrons because I'm giving them priority because they make this channel possible. Speaking of prioritizing projects. Overwhelmed and not lose motivation one at a time. Basically, how do I prioritize what I'm doing and not lose motivation? Do I work on multiple things at one time? I have learned that if I put a project down, I will probably never ever come back to it. Whenever I have a partially completed project that I put aside to come back to later, it usually sits in my way unfinished for several weeks or months until I inevitably ditch the project and trash it. So for that reason, I try to stick to one main project at a time. Sometimes I will be doing two different things so that I can overlap drying times and be more efficient. But essentially my headspace is in one project at a time, and I try to see things through to completion. If there's something that stops me from completing it, that's beyond just picking up some materials, I usually just terminate it because I know it'll never get finished. Ever thought of working with someone to publish some ideas as modules like my own stories and stuff? Yes, that's actually taking place right now, kind of slowly because I've been dragging my feet on some of my parts of the arrangement. However, this is something that's going to be happening. You will see a collaboration publication. I like that. Collaboration publication for myself and another group of people, somebody. Well, I'll just tell you, it's Quest Givers. Quest Givers and myself are going to be releasing a module that we came up with together, so stay tuned for that. What stories, movies, literature inspires you and your games? To be honest, not a lot, I don't think. I'm sure subconsciously, one, I don't read a lot, I just don't have time, and now I actually have very little time to watch movies or TV shows. So the few things I do watch are really big, well heavily watched things, so I'm not gonna rip off Game of Thrones for my game because everyone will have seen it. So honestly, not too much really. Have you watched Letterkenny? No more than a few very short clips. I probably should watch more because one of my best friends references it all the time, but I'm a bad Canadian and I haven't watched it yet. When a project doesn't go as planned, whether it be a piece you're trying to build or a paint job turning out, do you repurpose that piece into something different or try to salvage as best you can and work the rest of the piece around it to make it fit? For the most part, if I have something that's going poorly, I will just pivot and keep powering through that project until I get it right. I will find ways to hide the mistakes or capitalize on those mistakes, use them as something positive in the build. And more, I try to keep that in the videos when they take place because it's a really important fundamental skill of any creative process to be able to pivot from a mistake and adapt. I received a lot of questions about my tattoos, what they mean, what I have, how many I have, what do my wrists say. So I'm just gonna kind of combine them all here. I'm not gonna go into all my tattoos, but you guys mostly see the stuff on my arms. First of all, we have a lot of new stuff here that you saw outlined and then filled in recently. The colors are a lot more vibrant than the older stuff because it hasn't settled yet for those of you who don't know too much about tattoos. But here I have a big lich, which it's hard to show this on camera. You got the lich, that obviously represents my love for Dungeons and Dragons. Here is a very old tattoo. This is coming up on 16 years. This tattoo actually represents one of my previous musical projects, Distorted Memory. It's kind of an adaptation of the logo. Here I have more skulls because I love skulls, obviously. This one, a skull with the ram's horn, actually also represents my other musical project, Cake Builder. Intertwined with all of this are flowers and a motif of wheat. There's wheat, poppies, and roses running throughout, as well as some moths. That is related to my heritage as a Ukrainian Canadian. Wheat is very important to Ukrainians, as are poppies, and roses are a common motif. I come from a background of farmers. My family have been farming in Canada for over 100 years. Actually, fun fact, the first Ukrainian immigrant ever to set foot in Canada was a Pilipo, like myself. I'm still very connected to that heritage. My family still does a lot of Ukrainian things, and this is kind of my homage to that. I also have a big rooster, which is not finished. I have to get around to finishing that. It's also related to the farming background. My wrists have some words that you've probably seen, and someone was asking what they say because they can't read them on camera. These say Ultimate Machine. And these again are related to music. My background in industrial music, my best friend for many years and myself got into this music. It was very important to us. And we both got these tattoos that say Ultimate Machine. It's a title of a song from a project called Suicide Commando, which was very important in our formative years. We have these matching tattoos. Unfortunately, if you've seen my other Q&As, you know that a couple of years ago, I lost my best friend to suicide, in a horrible sense of irony, because we had these Suicide Commando tattoos. So now I'm the only one who has them. The matching pair is no more, but these serve as a reminder to that friendship and that part of my life. Oh, and if anyone's wondering where I get my tattoos, all the work up here was done by my friend Steve McConnell at Main Street Tattoo Collective in Winnipeg, and everything else here, this early tattoo and all this new work, was actually done by my brother-in-law, Kurt Wiscombe, who operates a very long running shop in the city called Tattoos for the Individual. So if you're in Winnipeg, you want some tattoos, check them out. When making individual bricks, what size do you tend to use for your builds? I don't stick to a particular size. The important part is that the length is double the width so that you can half offset and turn corners. For bigger things like castles and ruins and whatnot, I will use a size that's around 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 2 centimeters. And then for littler things, I'll kind of go with like 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch. But yeah, mixing the measurements there because I'm Canadian. Really doesn't matter. I don't know. I just eyeball them, and I usually just make enough for that project, so it doesn't matter if they match up to other stuff. I like that variation amongst my builds. Do you have any hobbies outside of crafting? What do you do for fun when you need a break from the YouTube gig? It's a good question because this hobby was my hobby. Now it is my job. Well, the hobby is half my job. Actually, YouTube is the other half. They go together. I can't enjoy it as a hobby anymore, to be honest. I need something else to separate from, to end my workday with. Sometimes it is actually playing the games, but that doesn't happen as much as I would like. So currently my main hobby, the way I unwind and shut down, is by playing video games, which is not very productive, but I've been really enjoying vintage gaming lately, playing through a lot of the old NES titles that I loved when I was a kid, and some Super Nintendo stuff, and really just unwinding, laying down, playing some video games. Yeah, I wish it was a more creative thing, but my work is now creative enough. What situations do you feel it's better to use the green stuff roller versus individual bricks? And for me, it just comes down to time. I always think that the individual bricks look better by a wide margin. I much prefer them, but if you're in a hurry, that's when the rollers are great. I've been getting away from using them, but I'm also not pumping out a ton of repetitive stuff. I just build stuff for the videos. So speed is what separates when to use what. Knowing your history in music, do you ever create any of the music we hear in your videos, or are you completely done with creating music? That's a good question. The old videos, the ones that had my original intro and intro music, I composed that original intro music. I never composed the stuff in the videos, but the intro music I composed, but that's it. Now everything you hear is from a music licensing service. I pay other people for the rights to use their music, and it's much better that way. I don't have any time or interest in composing music currently. I do think that after some time, and I've kind of healed the wounds of quitting music, I think I might come back to it. And my idea is to actually come back and possibly compose an album of music to serve as a background for gaming, like maybe do a dungeon music soundtrack. And rather than going back to a musical project, actually making some music as Blackmagic Craft. But I don't know if and when that will actually happen. As a crafting DM, do you build terrain to match the planned encounters, or do you plan a session based off the things you've crafted? I don't have a clear answer for that because it is a circle and it's both. So I will often start planning a session, and I'll start thinking about the things that would be good to make for that, and I'll make some stuff, and then while I'm making it, that'll inspire me to make something else, and then that'll inspire me to change the story, and it's kind of a back and forth. It's both. I will say possibly the terrain inspires the story more than the story inspires the terrain. There's just times when I want to build something, I think it would be neat, and then I'll find a way to work it into a story. What's your plan to bring your craft to the next level, and what will you be able to create when you do? This is a tricky thing for me. It's actually one of the biggest struggles running this channel. Everybody grows over time with their art and ability. I have to keep my growth in check so that it stays viewable and accessible. If I wasn't doing YouTube, I don't think I would be building a lot of the stuff the way I'm still building it. I already know that now I have these inclinations where I just want to sculpt hyper detailed things and then mold them and cast them and replicate them that way. For the channel, that's not great. It's okay to do it sometimes, and I like to try to interject some videos or some video series where I'm just doing what I want to do, not something that is accessible and easy. But I don't know, it's a tricky thing for me because my growth as an artist or a builder is definitely affected by and stifled by running this channel, where my main goal is to help people in this hobby start out, make it easy, make it approachable. So I'm not really sure where it's gonna end up. I think what's probably gonna happen is rather than focusing on ways to make higher caliber stuff using these different things like sculpting masters and molding and casting, it'll probably just make me better at using the minimal stuff, like still using the approachable materials, but doing them better. So I don't know. It's a good question though. Suppose you must spend 1 year on a small island. You're the only person there. There is an adequate supply of fish and resources to survive. You can bring along the following: 1 book, 1 album to listen to, and 1 additional food source outside of the fish that you can eat. What would they be? Food source would probably be rice, so that I could maybe make some sushi because there's probably seaweed. I love sushi, it's my favorite food. Book, I don't know. It's been so long that I've had a chance to actually sit down and read a book that I can't even think of one off the top of my head that I really need to get through and read. I'm gonna be annoyingly clever and say an empty journal so that I can draw stuff and write stuff. And album, I can't answer that. I own like thousands of records. I can't just pick one. I'd probably pick none. If I can't have options, I don't want anything. Name 2 times when you saw another crafter's work and thought, wow, that's such a great idea. I wish I'd come up with that. I can't. I don't remember. There are times. I mean, one is the dungeon stackers. That was such a brilliant idea. I saw them and I had to share it with the world, adapt it to make it myself. But I actually somewhat try to avoid seeing other people's work too much so that it doesn't influence me too much. I like existing kind of in a bubble and being forced to come up with my own ideas. And sometimes maybe I'll come up with the same idea as someone else, but I came up with it on my own. I don't know. I try not to be influenced by others too much. What YouTube channels do you watch regularly, not counting the other Tabletop Crafters Guild Masters? Well, there's some other contemporaries, my peers, making videos that I watch, my other friends that aren't guild masters, like Luke from Luke's APS, Miniac, Miscast, when Miscast actually makes a video once a year. Get back to work, Trent. Apart from that, I kind of go through phases of things that are holding whatever I'm kind of interested in. I kind of dive deep into that area of YouTube. So right now I'm really into vintage gaming. So I'm watching a lot of vintage gaming channels. I like not playthroughs, but just people talking about games and collecting and histories and stuff. So I like stuff like Metal Jesus Rocks, just a cool dude talking about his game collection, SNES Drunk, those types of channels, The Gaming Historian, that kind of stuff. I also watch things like Peter McKinnon just to try to learn how to be a better YouTuber, like better at filming things, because I really don't have a clue. But I jump around quite a bit. How big is your game room for storage? It's the size of a single car garage. I don't remember. Yeah. It's about 20 by 14, 20 feet by 14 feet, and I have a lot of Billy bookcases for storage. I am the worst person to ask about storage in a small space because the only way I was able to do this is to give myself a dedicated room to store everything in. And that actually brings up another question that a lot of people ask, which is, how do I transport stuff to games? I don't. This stuff doesn't leave the room. I'm gonna be taking some of this stuff to FanQuest to show people, and that's already stressing me out. I understand a lot of people have to do that. I've just created a situation for myself where I don't have to do that, and I make people come here to play. Why do I seem to be the only person who likes Army Painter? I'm not long time in the hobby, but love them. Why do I not see more people using them? So I'm not the Army Painter lover. The person asking the question is, I don't use Army Painter just because I chose other ones when I started. I chose Reaper and Vallejo, and I like them, and I just haven't felt the need to try Army Painter. There's lots of videos out there comparing the different paints. Miniac has a really good one that compares the intro sets to all the different paint lines. I can't really answer about Army Painter because I haven't used it, but I have heard my fair share of people having various issues with them. They have their faults. Some people still love them. but that's not for me to answer. Are there any books that you've read that have helped you become a better DM? Not really, with the exception of Runehammer's ICRPG. He has a section in there about just general game mastering that is probably the best work on the subject, and it's something I highly recommend everyone look into and get. Even if you don't want to play that game system, that rule book is worth purchasing just for the section on designing rooms and encounters and game mastery. I'll put a link down there. Hopefully I remember to put it down. Put it down there, link ICRPG, the core rule book that's a good book to improve your skills. Out of all the skirmish games out there, what drew you to Frostgrave, and did you have any convincing to do to get your social group to try it? Frostgrave was appealing to me. A skirmish game in general was appealing to me because it was more pick up and play. There was no planning and DMing and all that kind of stuff. But of all the skirmish games, I picked Frostgrave because the aesthetics and the setting worked really well with a lot of the stuff I already had for D&D. It was comfortable. It was a setting I just was familiar with. I already had a lot of terrain for. And the rule system was pretty simple and the investment was really low. I have a whole video explaining my introduction to Frostgrave where I reviewed it if you would like more details. Oh, and as for convincing, no, my buddies were pretty keen to give it a go. You've mentioned a few times casually about Kill Team. Are you going to feature any Kill Team specific content in the near future? If by Kill Team specific content you mean terrain for it, then yep. I mean, my last 2 build videos were terrain that I built for Kill Team, and I plan to make a lot more. Actually, right now I'm struggling because I really just want to keep building stuff in that theme, but I don't want to overwhelm the channel with post-apocalyptic terrain. So yes. What is the most unexpected challenge and most unexpected reward you have experienced from going full-time as a content creator? Well, unexpected reward is just simply the satisfaction of turning something I love, just a passion hobby project, into a legitimate business that successfully supports my family. That's just incredible. Like, it's amazing. The biggest challenge I've been facing, there's a lot of them. One is just dealing with the content that you always have to be feeding. Any other job, you can take holidays because it's a company where you just don't work for a week or two and other people fill in your position. Maybe you have to do a little bit of work ahead of time to make that happen. Even small businesses where you're an independent person, you can usually shut down for a week or two to take some holidays. For me, I have my 2 videos I have to do every week, so I can't just stop, and it's hard to keep up to that all the time. And yes, I know people say, well, yeah, you just have videos preloaded for taking time off, and that's fine, except that means that in order to take a week off of work, I have to do 2 weeks worth of work the week ahead of time. So it's not really a true holiday, and that I'm surprising to be more difficult than I anticipated. The other big challenge, this is actually the biggest challenge for me, is that I spend the majority of my time not crafting, but sitting at a computer, editing videos, editing photos, doing social media, sitting at a computer, especially editing. I have a really bad back. I've always blamed it on construction, and I thought when I stopped my career in construction that my back problems would get better, but in fact, they got significantly worse. Sitting in a computer chair versus moving around and doing physical work is a lot worse on a back, which, you know, it makes sense when you think about it. And there are many days where I'm sitting there editing a video. I am in pain to the point where it's almost causes me to puke or cry. Like, it's bad back pain, and I have to just struggle through it and get the video edited. I try different things. I exercise, I take breaks, I try to move around, I try to stand up. I have a very good computer chair. Doesn't matter. That's been a real challenge, just sitting down at the desk and editing video when I'm in so much pain. It's almost blinding. So that's sometimes what I have to struggle through to get the videos complete, but hey, it's my job and it's an awesome job, so I struggle and I fight through it. Do you have any plans to make builds that are demonic in nature or angelic? I don't know, I just build what I want to build. Most of my stuff is pretty demonic in nature. I have done a lot of stuff in the past. I don't know, that's a weird question. I don't know, I build things that I want to build. I don't plan to do things that are X in nature, especially that specifically. Have you considered a tour, like coming to certain cities, doing a meet and greet or craft sessions at local game shops or other videos? What cities would you visit? Absolutely not. One of the main reasons I quit music is because touring is crap. It is a horrible way to exist, and I do not want to do it. It is not profitable. It's nope. I will come to some conventions, one-offs here and there, but I am not doing a tour. That will not happen. Will we ever see Steve the demonic intern again? No, that guy was a terrible intern. He's fired, and in all honesty, the little prop I used for him, we use as a Halloween decoration, put him outside every year, and he didn't quite survive last Halloween. He is in very poor shape. Have you ever considered adding a quick section in the video or as a document that is a list of the materials? Well, I mean, I explain what I'm using, and I have my essential equipment page, and I kind of do that in general terms, but I intentionally do not list specific items and specific paint colors because it goes against everything I stand for doing this channel. I don't want you to go out and make a thing and copy every single exact color of painting. That's not the point. The point is to take inspiration, get some ideas on technique, and make it your own. Use the materials that you have access to, use the paints that you have access to. So no, I will not be doing that. How's your wife doing? You've talked about her health in a previous Q&A vid, so it'd be nice to hear how she's getting on. For those of you who don't know, my wife 2 years ago was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a very difficult to diagnose and treat illness. Thankfully, over the past year, the medication, the intravenous treatments are being effective. She's doing good. This is not something that will be cured. This is a lifelong thing. She's going to be on medication for life, and hopefully that medication continues to work. Now that you've achieved your goal of being a full-time YouTuber, what's next for BMC? Do you have a goal for the next 12 months, either personal or professional? I'm not really sure. You know, the big goal previously was going full-time, turning it into a legitimate business. I hit that. Then the next goal was hitting the 100,000 subscriber milestone and getting my play button. I did that. I'm not sure what the one-year goal is. I mean, one of my goals is to be the first YouTuber in this hobby to reach 1 million subscribers, but that's not going to happen in 12 months. That's going to take a couple of years. So that's a goal, but in a year, essentially just to have the channel continuing to get better. Like I want to grow it. I want to have more views, more subscribers, more little business ventures and income streams, and just better quality videos. I'm trying to constantly get the quality of my videos up and up and up and up a little bit at a time. When are you and Brandish Gilhelm, Runehammer, gonna do another video together? I don't know, the next time we end up in the same place at the same time. We live over 2,000 miles apart. He came to visit me a year or two ago. I don't know when it was, and we made a video, but hopefully I will get to cross paths with him again, but I don't know when. What type of lighting and camera do you use? This is a long question. It's a hard question to answer because I have incrementally changed stuff over the years. I used to do almost everything just on an iPhone. I then got a Nikon D5100 to do talking headshots and still use the iPhone. Currently, what I'm doing, and everything from the past, say maybe several months worth of videos, is filmed with this camera here, which is a Panasonic Lumix G7. I use a ton of lights. What you don't see right now is there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 light sources set up here. It's complicated. I use these LED lights with baffles on them. I use a lot of light. In my desk area, work area, I have some LED tape lights. I can't go through and list it all, but the camera is a Panasonic G7, and I use a whole bunch of LED lights, and I've spent a lot of money on them, and I'm still haven't gotten them quite right. All right, that's all the questions from Patreon. So now some from the general public. You dropped everything to become a full-time YouTuber. How do you see your future? I see it great. I mean, like any job, I don't have job security. I used to think about that, you know, doing YouTube. Whoa, I don't know, there's no job security. What happens in a year? What happens if this? What happens if that? I don't know. You can say that about any career. Nobody really has job security. So I see myself growing this channel into a full-fledged empire. It could branch out into making my own tools, making my own products, being a whole television network. I don't know. The sky is the limit, and I see the future as bright. And if it's not, well, I'll pivot and I'll do something different. How is your hobby space organized, and could we perhaps see a room tour? Well, since redoing this room, I've wanted to do a room tour. Way harder to do that than I thought, because one of the things I did when I renovated this room, I basically blacked everything out. I got rid of all the windows, painted everything black so that I could light things in a controlled way and the backgrounds weren't too distracting, and that works great for controlled things. But to actually do a room tour is very difficult because, like I said, right now, to get this shot, I have 5 light sources placed to get this right. So to do a room tour, it's just gonna be black. It's gonna be really hard to do. I'm not sure how to do it. I will try to do it eventually. But what was gonna be an easy video when I was done is I'm realizing it's actually gonna be hard. But essentially, I have this room here that's, you know, a single car garage sized. It's my game room slash crafting room slash filming space. I have my game table in the middle. I have my crafting area over there, and then I just have walls of shelving to store everything. I'm finally getting to set up my own crafting room. Where should my emphasis be in creating the room and like organizing? And I will say organization is key. One of my favorite things I've ever learned about organizing workspaces, a conclusion I've come to myself, but I got the name of it from Adam Savage, which is first order retrievability. It's very important that everything that you use can be grabbed without having to move something else. You should be able to open a drawer, grab the thing you need, go on a shelf, grab the thing you need, because when items become buried behind other items and kind of annoying to get, you stop using them. I would figure out what the things are you use the most and keep them all within arm's reach and accessible, and anything that you don't use very often, keep it in, you know, compartmentalized storage, but don't make it so buried that you forget about it and never see it. Things that get buried in the back of drawers and boxes, they never get used. They just end up getting thrown out 3 years later when you reorganize. Just keep first order retrievability in mind. That's difficult in limited spaces, but it's worth the effort to implement it if you can. Do you have any tips for crafting in a smaller space? Tips for how to store finished work to keep it safe, or even just general tips for organizing crafting materials? Well, some of that was just answered. The small space thing is difficult. I'm not the type of person who can do that. I would say I'm lucky that I have this space to be dedicated for what I do, but it's not really lucky. I just made the decision to sacrifice space to give that to me. Now, I know you might be in a 1-bedroom apartment and like it doesn't matter if you want to sacrifice space or not, you literally can't or don't have it. But in my house, my garage is my game room. I live in a city where temperatures often reach -40, -50 degrees Celsius for large chunks of the year. I park my vehicles outside in the cold rather than in a nice warm garage so that I can have the space. I made that sacrifice because crafting in a small space is very difficult for me. I have a hard time with it, so I'm not the best person to answer that. But I would say having bins or totes that are easy to get stuff from and pack up so that it's not as much of a challenge to set up and tear down. If you can at least get a little area somewhere where you can leave things set up, like if you're painting some minis or building something, just a little place where you can leave the project set up so that you're more likely to come back to it, that's ideal. Like even if it's just the top of your refrigerator, you can place stuff. Maybe have like a little board where you work on, like get a cutting mat, put it on a little piece of plywood and keep stuff set up and place that on top of your fridge or slide it under the couch. Just try to find one space where you can keep stuff in between crafting sessions so you're more likely to come back to it. Because if you have to set everything up and tear everything down every time, it's going to discourage you from doing it when you could just sit on the couch and watch TV. So that's all I got. Hey bro, the wall where your paints are stored, custom or store-bought? Going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, sometimes questions like this you can answer just by searching the search bar in Google. If you search Blackmagic Craft paint racks, you will see a video about my paint racks that I use for storing dropper bottles. Those are purchased, there's a whole video about them. Then the horizontal shelves that hold the bigger items that you see, those I made myself, and I discussed them more in my old room tour from like 2 years ago. So it's a combination of both. What do you feel is the ideal height and width when it comes to building a house? The ideal height and width for building terrain houses is the one that looks right for that particular house. They should all be different. I don't know. Whatever size it needs to be. Make a bunch that are different sizes so you have variation. Stop worrying about those measurements. Is it hard to follow a YouTube agenda when you are not inspired to make videos or to do crafting? How do you feel when you would like to relax on the sofa but you have to make a video? Good question. One of the challenges of this channel is I have to be creative on demand. So one thing to do a creative thing and then share it with the world as you do it. But when it's your job and you have to do it on demand, that's very challenging, and it takes a particular skill to be able to do that. And it's one that I've slowly learned to develop. At the end of the day, it's my job. I come up with an idea and I make something, even if I'm not inspired or I want to sit on the couch, because it's my job, the same reason that you have to go do your job each day despite maybe not being into it that day. It's work. Have you ever considered a crafters build-off between crafting community leaders such as Miniac, Wylock, Scotty, Crafting News, etc., and letting fans appreciate and rate the friendly competition? That would be a really fun thing to do, our guild build challenges, but where we build this stuff and compete against each other. But if you think that getting a group of 5 adults together to play a game on a schedule is hard, try getting several content creators who, most of which don't do this as their full-time job and do it on the side. That would be impossible, like very difficult to organize and do it in a way that everyone can fit it into their schedule. It's a very cool idea and I would love to do it. I don't know how feasible it actually is to make happen. Maybe 1 versus 1. If you could build any one piece of terrain outside of your norm, i.e. it doesn't have to be modular, it doesn't have to be easy for viewing, it doesn't have to be fit into a weekly video, more a set piece, diorama, eye candy piece, what would it be? I don't have a particular thing that I would build, but if I didn't have all these constraints that I very much do have running this channel, what I would be doing is a lot more bulk work, a lot of more making a thing and then replicating it in mass, because that is the best way to build a collection. And unfortunately, a lot of time I will make an item and I'll share it with you guys, and then you guys can sit there and spend weeks just making tons of those, make lots of that item so you have lots for your game. But I have to make the whole thing within the span of 1 to 2 days because that's all I have time for. So I just have to make enough to show it on camera and make the video, and then next week move on to the next thing. So a lot of time I don't have enough of something or as much as I would like to make. Like I made those concrete ruins a couple weeks ago. I made 4 pieces just for demonstration for the video. If I didn't have all these constraints, I would have spent a week or 2 making dozens of them in all cool different shapes and sizes so that I had a huge table's worth. But that's my big constraint, and that's what I would do if I didn't have it. How do you manage your time between building, filming, editing, interacting with the community, and still have time for family? I made it my job. I spent 2 years not having a good balance on those things and spending all my off time from my day job doing this stuff. My family didn't see me on Saturdays. I would do 14 to 20 hour Saturdays every single day for a year on the channel. Then I made it my job so that I could operate within business hours like a normal person doing a job, so that when I'm not working, I have time for my family. But I do have to schedule that stuff. I have a schedule that I follow. Mondays, I film, edit, and upload the Tuesday review video. On Tuesdays/Wednesdays, depending on how big it is, I will edit the video for Friday from the thing I built the week previously, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or just Thursday, Friday, I spend building the thing for next week's episode, and I have to try to fit it all in, and it's a lot more work than you would think. Like the Tuesday video takes up a full working day of work, and the Friday videos, between building and editing, they can take anywhere from 20 to 40, even 50 hours to complete. So sometimes I have more than a 40-hour work week to squeeze in, plus all the other stuff, running the business, social media, all these things, but I somehow find a way to do it. Do you think there is still space in the YouTube sphere for another tabletop crafting channel? What niche do you think has been underserved that could be filled by someone to help the overall community? Absolutely. YouTube is a huge platform. There's always room for more creators in any niche. And in fact, I think the more creators there are in any niche, the better it is for everybody. When there's just one dude doing something very specific, it doesn't get a lot of traction and YouTube doesn't recognize it. The more people there are doing a certain thing, the more keywords that YouTube connects from creator to creator and viewer to viewer, the more it's gonna push those up in the impressions. So I think there's always more room. I think more people in any specific niche are better. I don't even think you need to fill a specific niche. I'm not really sure. I think the more important thing is finding something that you can portray that you care about and maintain, because it's not about finding the niche. It's about finding something that you can portray in a way that shows passion, that you love it, and that you can maintain week to week to week to week to week to week long term. That's the real challenge. But by all means, if you want to start a channel, start a channel. Since your videos are mostly based on fantasy builds, what do you think your first big post-apocalyptic build will be? Well, I already started some of those little ones, and I have lots of ideas. I want to make some big buildings, tankers, catwalks. I got a lot of ideas for post-apocalyptic stuff. My biggest thing right now is not overwhelming the channel with it and ostracizing all the people that are here to see fantasy stuff. What do you let your daughter do when you need to work on a project for the channel? Any recommendations for someone who doesn't have a workroom to keep tiny animals and kids from destroying your work? Back to making it my job, there's no way I can do what I do with a 4.5-year-old running around. I learned that a long time ago. I do it when she's at preschool because I've set it up so I can do it during working hours. In the past, when I worked a day job and had to do it on my own time, my wife would take the kid out of the house for those hours so I could work and film in peace. So it's very difficult. I think once they hit a certain age, like maybe even 5 or 6, after that, then you can keep them busy and let them do their own crafts. And I intend to do that as my daughter gets a little bit older. Man, it's a challenge. It's hard to stay focused when there's a little one in the room. So good luck. I want to have a channel that covers all aspects of art that I enjoy: terrain building, painting, watercolor, sculpture, crafting. I realize this is broad, but do you think it's too general? Essentially, unless you're making videos for a living, do you think it's more important for someone to do their own thing or try to specifically target a demographic? If you just want to make a channel for you, do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. If you want that channel to be successful, be it successful enough to get a lot of eyes on it or turn into a business, but successful in some measure, you do need to focus in some sense. It is important to focus and not be too broad, because broadness can be a killer on YouTube. You want people to watch a video and know what you're all about, and when they sign up to watch more, they get more of that similar thing. If you're jumping all over the place, it will kill your growth. If you're just doing it for you and for fun, then it doesn't matter. So it depends on what your goals are with that, making that channel. Hey Jeremy, how has your life changed since you quit your day job and started full-time with YouTube? Have your overall quality of life been better, or is it starting to wear off having your hobby as your job? I've kind of touched on this already. Overall, it has vastly improved my life. It has removed a significant amount of stress. You would think doing a crazy venture would add more stress, but I came from a very stressful industry, and it has been so good to my mental health to do this instead of what I was doing before. Working for myself, doing something I care about, being in a passion project business, these have all been great for my mind and my soul. Surprisingly not for my body though, like I mentioned, and I do miss the physical activity from construction that, keeps my back in check. And in terms of the hobby, yeah, that's the reality of it. This hobby is now my job, so it's not a hobby anymore, and I do find times to gain pleasure out of it, but everything I do has to be on camera and has to be part of the business. So like I said, I've had to find other things to do as a hobby aside from this hobby, but I'm okay with that. I think it was a worthwhile trade-off. Will we ever see you at Gen Con? Maybe. I thought about going 2 years in a row. It's a big, overwhelming trip. I'm not sure if I'm up for it. Traveling to the States is not my favorite thing in the world, so maybe one day, but I don't know when. You will see me in November at Mace in North Carolina. I think it's in North Carolina. I'm going down there in November for my first US convention, so you will see me there, and maybe you'll see me at other conventions in the future. How many videos had you put out before you actually knew the channel was a hit? I'm not sure, but it was very early on. Within the first several episodes, I knew I was onto something, and I knew that what I was doing was clicking with people, and that if I put in more effort, it would probably succeed. And I put in more effort, I saw immediately the results of that, and I just ran with it. So it was very early on. It was very early on that I realized that I had an audience and that I was pretty okay at doing this. At that time, I didn't see it getting to this level. That took much, much longer. What advice would you give to your past self who was just starting out in the YouTube game? I think the way I started was okay, but my advice, I really wish I could go back in time and actually tell myself to quit my day job like 6 months or a year earlier. I waited a long time and caused a lot of stress on myself and my family, made a lot of sacrifices, waiting for it to hit a certain level. But I'd like to go back and say, hey, just quit way earlier. You will grow way faster when you're focusing on it full time. And you don't need to wait for it to get to this point to quit, because if you quit, it'll go to that point really fast. I was too scared of jumping in full time like I shouldn't have. I should have had more faith and made that decision sooner, which is a testament to that decision and how good it actually was. I would like to know, apart from the craft father, DM Scotty, and other guild leaders, who is your main source of inspiration and how you think they influence your craft. I don't take much inspiration at all from other creators. I just do my own thing. Sometimes I'll just see random stuff on Facebook in the groups, and yeah, it'll inspire me, but there's no one person. I do take a lot of inspiration for the channel from other people. I get a lot of inspiration from other content creators in terms of video production, guys like Miniac. I mean, if he wasn't making high quality videos, I wouldn't be making high quality videos. I take inspiration from big creators like Peter McKinnon. That's where I get my main inspiration. But in terms of the actual craft, not so much. For making larger builds like cliffs or mountains, do you think it would be better to use a spray expanding insulation foam rather than stacking and gluing XPS? No, I don't like spray foam as a material. It is pretty soft. I like XPS for most things. Spray foam's kind of a pain in the butt. It's totally fine, people use it, but for me, I'm not that big of a fan. You have mentioned in a video or two why you don't record your games, but my question is, do you eventually want to record your games, and what do you need to have to feel comfortable enough to record your games? This is a whole video topic in and of itself. In order to record games to a level that I would feel comfortable putting on this channel in terms of quality, it would take way more resources than most people imagine. There's a reason that Matt Colville went on Kickstarter to raise a couple $1 million to do the exact same thing. I would need tens of thousands of dollars of cameras and mic equipment and a staff to work it, and then all that editing. Like it's just a huge undertaking. And on top of that, I don't want to really record my games because I think they're a private affair. I'm not in love with recorded games in general. I don't find them interesting. I don't watch them. I appreciate what other channels have done to grow the hobby, but I think people should spend less time watching other people play games and more time playing games. I don't know, that's just me. I don't know that all my players want to get on camera. The other thing is, I think that every game that has ever been recorded, no matter how well-intentioned it is to keep it legitimate and true to the spirit of their own game, having a camera on the game changes it. You become actors. You are playing for the audience. It's never, ever truly the same as if the game was played without the camera. And I'm not sure I want that for my group. And like I said, doing this as a job, actually just playing with my friends, is one of the only ways I still get to enjoy this hobby that's not work. I do have a goal on Patreon when I hit a certain funding level where, as a reward, I am going to film at least a couple games. I'm going to use those resources, that extra funds, to get some of the resources and maybe do it, but I don't think regularly recorded games will ever be a part of this channel. What would be an essential skill that a beginning crafter should learn first? How to lay out a true square and cut it. You need to understand how squares work. And it amazes me that how many people just don't know how to make a true square. You should be able to draw a square on a piece of paper that is a perfect square, all 90-degree corners, and there's a way to do it. Again, search bar, Blackmagic Craft, cut perfect squares. Learn that. How challenging is it to balance gaming, running a channel, and a community alongside raising a small child and tending to your family? It's difficult, and again, I had to make it a business in order to balance everything. How do you feel about the Winnipeg Jets coming back to the NHL? Just wondering your opinion. I'm from Winnipeg. How the hell do you think I feel? This is the best thing that ever happened to this city. It was a very dark time when we, in between our loss of the Winnipeg Jets and regaining them, this city was damaged and broken, and it took them coming back to fully heal, and it is very important to the city. Any advice for folks looking to get into YouTube? Well, it depends. Like I said, if you want to get into it for fun or serious. If you want to do it seriously and actually get some success, figure out your niche, be a good personality, be consistent. Consistency is the number one most important thing in running a successful channel, and the one thing that a lot of channels fail on. You need to be able to output content on a schedule, be it weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, but it has to be on some sort of consistent schedule. It's very, very important. And I will say, if you're just starting out, don't get too stressed out about cameras and getting high-end cameras. Like I said, I built this channel and this business into a business that supports my family, filming the majority of what I do on an iPhone. What is important though, and you should consider, is audio. If you sound like you're speaking in a tin can a mile away from the camera, people will tune out and stop watching. Figure out your audio. I use a lapel mic and a digital recorder. I record separate audio and sync it up after the fact in post-production. On my voiceovers, I use a good microphone. Learn about audio a little bit. Do you ever build extra crafts and sell them somewhere? Nope, absolutely not. Never have, never will. I do not do commissions. It goes against my whole reason of doing this channel, of teaching people to do it themselves. How did you come up with a Blackmagic Craft Mod Podge and black paint base coat? I don't remember. Previously, I was using watered down PVA glue and I wasn't really happy with it. And I had Mod Podge for some reason. I bought it for something else and I decided just to try it, and it blew my mind because it is not just PVA glue, it is so much better. But I don't remember specifically how or why or when I tried it. How do you avoid going too heavy with dry brushing on big flat pieces like dungeon tiles? Less paint. Wipe it off more. Wipe it off more. Wipe it off more. When you think there's no paint on the brush, wipe it off some more and then try and go very lightly. You gonna review contrast paints? I would love to have a viral video about something that's super divisive and popular to talk about right now, but I don't think I'm the right person to review them. I did order a couple because I want to use them for a particular thing, and maybe I'll review them. I don't know, but I'm not going all in on contrast paint hype like everybody else. If I want to visit Canada, what is the food I need to try? Well, it depends what part of Canada you visit. We're a very big country with a lot of diversity within it. But if I had to pick one thing, it would be poutine. If you've only ever eaten poutine in another country, especially like in the States, you have not eaten it. I'm sorry, Americans do not know how to make it. In fact, a lot of Canadians don't get it right. It has to be right. Get some good poutine, it'll change your mind or change your world. It's amazing. What do you do if you get burnt out or just uninspired? power through it, get over it, just make something. I make something, and then as I'm making it, I become re-inspired. My friends and I are looking to build a gaming table with a recessed space like your table for gaming. How much space would you recommend for this area? I think a 3 foot by 3 foot area, which is what I have, is the minimum, and that's very good for a small group if it's just 3 to 4 players. But if you have a bigger group and you like to set up big, elaborate outdoor things or setups, go longer. I wouldn't go any more than 3 feet wide, maybe go 3 by 5. Boxers or briefs? Listen, I'm not a teenage skateboarder. I don't wear boxers. I'm not a 70-year-old man. I don't wear briefs. I wear boxer briefs like a normal middle-aged man. Do you find it more satisfying to build the things that are simple but highly reusable, or things that are unique but may only be used once or twice? Absolutely the reusable stuff. Yeah, it's fun to make really detailed, hyper cool one-off things, but it's not for me. I love the engineering involved of making something really, really reusable. I much prefer that over the way things look, and I get way more satisfaction designing something that is modular and works in different ways. That is very, very satisfying. What do you use the most out of everything you've made? Basic dungeon tiles and these pillars. Go back to one of the very old videos, check out these pillars, make some for yourself. They are the most usable bit of terrain you can have. Could you have used foam from foam plates or takeout containers to do thin planks? And when I did my dollar store challenges, this is something I didn't think about or forgot. If you don't have a hot wire table and you want to have thin XPS foam for things like shingles and planks, a great source is styrofoam plates from the dollar store. Even better if they're ones that you used and then you can actually let them not go to the dump at least for a while, but excellent source of plain thin XPS foam. What advice would you have if someone wanted to make this hobby into a career? Make sure you have a backup hobby. Is there anything about crafting that you don't like? The mess and the cleanup and how chaotic it is. I'm sure you can tell by watching my videos. I like to stay somewhat organized, and I don't like the mess that crafting creates. Why do you use a 3x3 tile system? Because I like it. It's aesthetically pleasing to me, and it lays out on the table much quicker than a 2x2 system. What is your artistic background? I don't have one. In terms of visual art, I don't have an artistic background. I could never draw or do anything visually artistic, and that's why this hobby's been so great for me, because it's allowed me to actually be pretty good at something visually artistic. Did you ever LARP? Nope, and I never will. What DM screen do you use? Have you made or thought about making one? What is your opinion on those big terrain castle thingy screens? Those big ridiculous ones, I do not like them. I think they're silly. If you want to make one, all the power to you, but I don't think they're practical. I don't use a DM screen all the time. 50% of the time I don't. I'll use my little angled thing on my table to kind of hide some papers, but I don't like DMing like this. I think that's silly. Sometimes I do it when I gotta hide a bunch of stuff, and I'll just use the basic Wizards of the Coast D&D 5e DM screen. I do have one that I just recently got that I may be switching to that's very nice, and I will be doing a review video on that one shortly. How are you editing your videos? If you mean what program, I am using Adobe Premiere. Does crafting for a job ever take the fun out of it, as you have to do it and it isn't always a choice? Absolutely, 100%. It's part of the job. What are some cost-effective alternative to the Proxon table? I'm sorry, but there aren't. The only cost-effective alternative is building your own if you possess the skills to do so, and I think that is the best alternative to the table. None of the competitors are making a hot wire table that comes close to comparing. They always have some sort of fatal flaw. Usually it's not having a variable temperature control or some other things. The Proxon, as far as pre-built, is the way to go, but building your own, if you can do it, is a great way to get an amazing machine for cheaper. Or just use a knife if you have to. If you had a mermaid girlfriend, which half would you want to be fish? Can I pick the inside half? What are the absolute essentials as far as tools and materials that a beginner should have and work with when on a tight budget? A utility knife, cutting mat. It doesn't have to be an expensive self-healing cutting mat. Just a cheap dollar store cutting board can get you by, or even just a good supply of cardboard to save your table, hot glue gun, PVA glue, cheap brushes, cheap craft paint, some cardboard, cereal boxes, styrofoam. That should get you started. What is your favorite material of all time? It's XPS foam, of course. I've noticed on a couple videos I've watched so far that you sometimes have an issue of fine particles from sanding or maybe fumes. You do well to point out using a mask and making sure you have good ventilation, but it made me wonder, have you ever tried or considered trying a backdraft booth? I have plans to build a little spray booth for this room and to vent it outside. That is going to happen at some point in the future, and I will make a video. 3D printer, I just put that down to cover the numerous questions about 3D printing. I think 3D printing is very cool. I think it is an excellent alternative to crafting. I think it is a fantastic tool to supplement your crafting, to make little bits to go with your thing. I think 3D printing is great. I don't own one, and it used to be because of the cost, but now the cost is really reasonable. And I used to not like the way 3D prints look, but now with resin printing, they can look fantastic. I could just go get a resin 3D printer tomorrow for a reasonable price and use it, and it would be a great tool, and I would love to. The main reason I don't do that is because, one, I don't have the time to invest in learning the skills involved in utilizing a 3D printer properly. And also, again, this channel is a business. I try to keep things accessible. I worry about getting a 3D printer and it taking over. I'm not sure. You may see it used sparingly on the channel in the future, but for now, I'm perfectly content getting by without one. How often, if ever, do you build something that you don't record or release a video on? Never. I used to, but never. I don't have time in my life to build things that don't get recorded. Do you appreciate when we copy your craft videos and send you the results? I love when you guys replicate my builds, especially when you make them your own. That's the whole point of this channel. I absolutely love it. I love seeing them in the Facebook groups, and if you're on Patreon, posting them there. I will admit, when you guys bombard me with photos on Facebook, I get hundreds of messages on Facebook and I can't address them or deal with them, so that's not the best way to share. I much prefer that you share them in the big groups and maybe tag me, and then I see it, and that's awesome, and I do love seeing them. How much time do you spend glued to YouTube analytics each day? A fair bit, not a ton. I pay more attention to other things like the comments than the actual analytics. I do read every single comment I receive on my channel. I don't have time to answer them all, but I read every single one of them. Have you tried any other kind of scale model building? Not since I was a kid. When I was younger, I did some of the old Aurora monster models, but I haven't done much other stuff. I would like to experiment with it more in the future, maybe do some dioramas for action figures, that sort of thing, but it's a matter of time. Do you ever feel enslaved by YouTube? Yep. But that's okay. And the last question to end this, if you were to create another YouTube channel, what would it be? There's two channels I'd like to actually make. One is an ASMR channel because I like ASMR videos, but I'm set up to make really good ones. I could make ones that were unique with the stuff I have, but also ASMR is kind of weird. I don't know if I want me doing ASMR attached to my brand as a channel, because for those of you out there who are like, yeah, ASMR, you get it and it's cool, and then for everyone else, it's a weird thing they don't understand. So I would also like to just have a channel where I just got to talk about dumb stuff like reviewing snacks from different countries or whatever, something fun and casual. But really, I don't know that I will start another channel anytime soon because this one is already a full-time job. So that's it. 100 questions answered, give or take. Hope you enjoyed this. Congratulations if you've made it all the way through. I know it's been a bit of a long haul. If you have any other questions for me just in general, I will say that sending them to me on a private message in Facebook is not a great way to do it. If you have questions for me, try to post them on the appropriate YouTube videos. I try to answer them there because they're public and they can help a lot of people in the process rather than just private messaging. Then it stays there forever for others to see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know some of you are not into this sort of thing, but if you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Let me know in the comment section below. If there's some question you really wish I'd answered and I didn't, put it down below again. That's it for this week, guys. I'll see you again next week. Hopefully back to building something and For those of you locals, I hope to see you at FanQuest on Sunday. I would love to meet some of you. Okay, guys, have a good one. Cheers.